always had a slim body. And when I was young, my father was a headmaster, my mother was a teacher. Those days, being a son of a headmaster was a privilege which very few people had. In 1980, it should be an arm of the United Nations came to our school where my father was headmaster and where I was a pupil to look for students, people who were vulnerable, who were not well fed, who were malnourished. And they identified me as one of those who needed supplementary feeding. And I were given my hair, which I enjoyed myself, but it embarrassed my mother because now this is the son of a headmaster and a teacher, and he is being identified among those who are malnourished. So she made a promise that whatever you want to eat, I will buy it. Just to mention whatever you want. I said, no, that's a very good privilege. I will utilize it to the best. I would tell her, I want 8 eggs, and grateful. It is grateful. Thank you very much. God bless you. We want to take this time to look at a subject I'm very passionate about, and I get a lot of motivation from the history of our church. I find a lot of motivation as I look at the contribution of the pioneers and as I look at what they did. I see possibilities and I also feel very much challenged because of what they did to lay the foundation and also to give us a very effective framework for advancing mission. And I'll spend this time looking at the history of our church and what we can glean from our pioneers to advance mission. I want to say, without any equivocation, without any apology, that this is the church that God has constituted for mission. It is not better than any other church, no, and we have never said we are the only ones who have a monopoly of heaven, no. We have been called and been given a special assignment. And if we don't do that assignment, God has not yet tasked any other uh, movement for this task. What is our task? Our task is encapsulated in Revelation chapter 14, verse 6, 7, 8, the three angels' message to announce the hour of God's judgment and call upon the world to wait for God's imminent return. This is our unique mission, and that unique mission was presented to Hiram Edson through the sanctuary, the meaning of the sanctuary. And this takes me to the history of our movement. And I'm convinced that God has led this movement. We believe our church begins from Eden when God created Adam and placed him in the Garden of Eden. He gave him an assignment to be a steward of God's creation and to be accountable to God. And we don't have time to discuss the church through the books of Exodus, etc. But after the New Testament, after Christ has left, he has constituted a church through his message to Peter that you have to work together to build God's church. And in the book of Acts, we are informed about this church. And In the second century, we see this church developing. And one of the challenges which begins to manifest itself in the second century, we have a church that begins to apostatize, which begins to syncretize, bring in some concepts from the world and infuse it into religion. And one of those is sun worship. We have different cults which were there, like Mithrais, etc. But let me not discuss those. And Sunday worship begins right from the second century. There are people who say Sunday worship began with Constantine in 321. No, it began much earlier, from the second century. I'm not visible enough. It's better from there. Okay. Oh, sorry. Forgive me. I should remain stationary. Oh, okay. I'm a typical African. You know, with Africans, we are not used to lecterns. We usually speak while itinerating, but I know there is an online audience. My apologies. So the church begins to depart from what God has prescribed for the church. And by 321, you have Constantine passing the edict, which makes Sunday a compulsory day of rest. And this continuous new teachings come in. And finally, we have a church that has completely departed from what God had prescribed. For example, the Council of Ravenna said people can be baptized through sprinkling, and many other practices were brought in. And these were the practices that were challenged by the reformers. After the Reformation, then we have our movement, which begins through the preaching of William Miller. He announces the imminent return, which does not happen on 22 October. Christ does not come. And when he does not come, there is the great disappointment. And then Hiram Edson, on the 23rd, is walking through his cornfield, and he has an illumination. It's not a vision, but it's an illumination. And he says Christ moving from the holy place to the holy of holies. Then we begin. He writes an article. It's him and Dr. F.B. Han and Owen R.L. Crozier. They write an article, and this article explains what happened on the 22nd of October, that Christ is doing his ministration in the second apartment of the sanctuary. And several teachings begin from there. And the church is split into various movements after the great disappointment. You have a group that remains with William Miller, and this group has people like Joshua V. Himes. Then you have another group which continues to set new dates that no, he is coming in 1845. Then you have another group as well which says Christ has come spiritually, which are known as spiritualizers, that Christ has come spiritually. But the group that we are interested in is a group of shut door theorists. They say, like in Matthew 25, the virgins, the foolish virgins, the door was closed before the master arrived. So anybody who rejected the message of the coming of Christ in 1844 has no access to salvation. And this group has people like Ellen White. That time she's not married. It is Ellen Gold Hammond. It is James White. It is Bates, Joseph Bates. Joseph Bates is the preeminent Millerite in this group. And they begin to study scripture. And they believe in the shadow theory. And as they study scripture, they understand, they come to new understanding of the meaning of scripture, and also they correct some misunderstanding that they had. One of these that they correct is the teaching on the Sabbath. To what extent should I itinerate? How much latitude do I have to move around? Here to here. Okay. Because when I'm stationary, I feel like I am no longer an African. As Africans, we move around, you know. We are locomotive people. So please allow me to be an African. All right, it's okay. So I'll make sure I don't move too much. Right. So one of those is the teaching on the Sabbath. How do we come to have the teaching on the Sabbath? A young woman, she is a daughter who is married in the Farnsworth family. She is Rachel Preston. She goes to visit a church which was Millerite. William Miller never kept the Sabbath. William Miller, until he died, he kept Sunday faithfully. Joshua Himes never kept the Sabbath. Until he died, he was a Sunday keeper. So there is a church which is following Miller, and the pastor in this church is Wheeler. And Wheeler says he is preaching that day, and he is calling upon the church to keep the commandments. Then there is a visitor by the name of Rachel Preston. Rachel Preston is a Seventh-day Baptist. Oh, sorry. Am I okay? I'm hearing an echo. Oh, okay. That's all right. Rachel Preston is a Seventh-day Baptist, and she confronts the pastor. She says, Pastor, I heard you teaching about keeping the commandments, but you guys don't keep those commandments. Why? You don't keep the Sabbath. And so how can you teach the commandments when you don't keep one of the fundamental commandments, the Sabbath? And Wheeler studies with Rachel Preston from the Bible. Then they come to the conclusion that the Sabbath is the day of the Lord. So from that, the Millerites, this group of Millerites begins to keep the Sabbath. Then other teachings begin to come in. But what I want to correct is our teachings were never given to us by Ellen White. I have listened at times to some of our detractors speaking authoritatively and very confidently about things that are not true. We never got any of our teachings through the visions of Ellen White. Our teachings emanated from Bible study. And those teachings were not given first to Ellen White, then we write, no. Rachel Preston teaching on the Sabbath, it was never through Ellen White. It came through Rachel Preston Oaks, and she gave it to her pastor, who was Wheeler. Then Wheeler gave it to Joseph Bates. Then Joseph Bates shared it with others. He shared it with John Andrews. Andrews wrote a book on the sanctuary, and it is Andrews who convinced Ellen White and James White on the Sabbath. It's not Ellen White who got a vision and gave it to everybody. No. So this is how it develops, and we have several teachings. Then we grow, and another of our teachings I've mentioned the sanctuary. And then Ellen White gets another vision, what is known as the Otseko vision, on health reform. Many of our pioneers, some of them used to smoke, not all of them. Some of them used to smoke. They would preach after preaching. Then the pastor says, do you have a match? Please, can you help me? I need to light my cigar. And but Ellen White is shown through the Otseko vision that tobacco, tea, alcohol, and flesh diets are harmful to the body, and we have these teachings on health reform. She was also not the first one. Some of these ideas, she had received them. Joseph Bates was emphatic on health reform, and also there were movements. It's known in America as the Jacksonian era, and this was an era which was very emphatic on health reform and also the use of natural remedies. And we have people like Jackson and Troll who were using natural remedies. Ellen White had lost, you remember, Ellen White lost her last born son and also lost her first born son. And James White, as well known as Unwell, she had to take him there. So she learned a lot on the use of natural remedies. I don't want to be controversial, but let me just correct one thing, which at times there are people who say, as Adventists, we should not go to medical doctors. Ellen White said we should not go visit medical doctors. They use drugs, etc., etc. I am not a medical practitioner, so I don't want to, but I have read Ellen White and I have read the history of the church. So let me speak from that perspective. Ellen White, mainly what she advocates is prevention of disease. You read Ministry of Healing, councils on health, councils on diet and food. It's prevention of disease as much as possible. So if we can avoid disease so that we can be effective for mission, that is what she advocates. And she sent John Harvey Kellogg, she sent him to Bellevue Hospital in New York. It was the best in New York at that time. It was not an Adventist hospital. She sent him there to study medicine so that she could come and join one of our medical practitioners, Horatio S. Lay, H.S. Lay, at the Dansville Institute. And he began what is known as Berkeley Creek. And he grew that sanitarium. It used a lot of natural remedies, but this was a properly trained and accredited medical doctor. So I am cautious at times when people just speak authoritatively and pretend to be giving therapies when they have not been properly trained in that line, and they say, if you're not well, don't go to a clinic, don't go to, we're following the counsels of Ellen White. But this is not part of my script, but I said, let me just correct what Ellen White, is a improper notion of what Ellen White did. The church begins to grow. 1874, the church sends its first missionary to Switzerland, who is John Nevins Andrews. He is sent to evangelize Switzerland, lives with his daughter. His wife had already died. So he lives with his two children, and they go to work in Switzerland. John Andrews was quite a brilliant fellow, extremely brilliant, but committed to mission. You know, our pioneers, these is not people who had nothing to do. These were people who were highly effective in their societies. One of them was John Nevis Andrews. Highly intelligent, he had a degree in logic. Then, having a degree in logic was, I don't know what I could equate it to in the modern times, but it was one of the most prestigious qualifications in those days for one to have a degree in logic. And he memorized the entire New Testament, John Nevins Andrews, a genius. But he spent his entire energy advancing mission. And the other one was Uriah Smith. Uriah Smith had some patent rights. He developed one of the school desks. He designed a school desk, and he also designed an artificial leg patented after him. And he was also in the race towards designing the first automobile. It was later done by Gottlieb Daimler, but also Uriah Smith had designed what is known as a horseless carrier. Why? Because Uriah Smith had lost his leg, and he said, let me see, how can I fix this leg? And he designed that, and he also designed a horseless carrier in order to advance mission. These were people who were very energetic about mission. Then Andrews begins work in Switzerland, and God, in his own way, he begins the work here in Africa. How does this happen? In 1871, there is a young man who is a fortune hunter. Looking for fortune, he goes to Australia. He had attended the preaching of John Loughborough in California, and he had been converted as a Seventh-day Adventist. His name was William Hunt. He went to Australia, then later on moved to South Africa. When he got to South Africa, he shared the Sabbath message with a group which had JVC Wilson. They accepted the message. These were whites in South Africa, in the Cape mostly. Later, he moves. He gets to, actually, even before he does that, another man, Peter Wessels, he reads the Bible by himself, and he gets to the conclusion that the Sabbath is the day of the Lord. And he gets to that conclusion independently. Another one as well reads the Bible, J.G. Van Bruten reads the Bible and he realized that the Sabbath is the day of the Lord. Nobody evangelizes each of these. They read independently and get to that conclusion. When they do so, they believe they are the only Sabbath keepers in the world. They thought they are the only Christians who keep the Sabbath in the entire world. And one day, they come across William Hunt, and they learn that no, there are other Sabbath keepers in America. Then they write a letter asking for Sabbath keepers to come and teach them more truths from America. They come, these are sent 1888, these are sent to South Africa, and 1887 rather. They come, they are led by Robinson, and they have C.L. Boyd, Heaver Star, and they begin to work mainly among the whites in South Africa. Then there is an interest to evangelize local Africans. One gets converted independently. This one, he accepts the Sabbath independently without anybody evangelizing him. But they are keen to evangelize local Africans. How do we reach out to local Africans? Then in 1888, this is when we have the Rat concession, those who study Zimbabwean history. After the Rat concession, 1890, this is where we have the Union Jack in Salisbury. And there is a lot of information which begins to filter to the world, especially about Shona people. What is it that is interesting? They discover Zimbabwe ruins, and they also find the terraced gardens in Mutare. And they say in Mutare that there are bananas, there are lemons. Then to them, they conclude that this is a civilization which we can use to evangelize the entire Africa. Why should we prefer Shona people? This is in the archives. They think these are the best for a few reasons. They say these are peaceful people. They are not warlike, so it's easy to work among them. Then the second motivation, they say they are a remnant of a great civilization. So to them, Africa was a dark continent, but there were areas which were less dark than the entire Africa. And they say this is a patch which is less dark. Here, there is a ray of light among these people. These are remnant of a great civilization. When we say these terraced gardens, we see the great Zimbabwe. These are civilized people. We can work with them. They are easy to quickly, we can sell our idea and they can run with it the entire Africa. Then the third motivation, they say they have a concept of the Sabbath because they have Chesi, they have a day which they dedicate to God. So even though it's not on Sabbath, but they have an idea of the Sabbath. So at a group of missionaries leave exactly on the 6th of May,